They say a surgeon can't save a man who's been dead for 650 years. They're wrong. The night I spilled blood on Lord Alaric Ravenwood, the most dangerous creature in New York, I didn't just start a war. I ended one. A war he'd been fighting alone since the trenches of the Somme swallowed his son whole in 1916. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the three things that led a 52-year-old man with nothing left to lose into the arms of a monster. Number 1, $210,000 in medical debt. Number 2, a 9-year-old girl named Isabel who deserved better than a grandfather too proud to ask for help. Number 3, a black envelope that slid under my door at 3:47 in the morning, offering $30,000 cash for a single house call. No questions asked. No second chances. Queens, New York, November 14th, 2024, 3:47 a.m. The sound of paper scraping against the gap beneath the door cut through the silence of my studio apartment like a scalpel through skin. I was awake. I was always awake at this hour. Sleep had become a luxury I couldn't afford, not when the collection agencies called every morning at 8 sharp, and not when the rent was due in 4 days, and I had exactly $632 in my account. I sat on the edge of my mattress, the springs groaning under my weight. 52 years old, a decade past the prime that the medical field told me I was supposed to have. My hands, the same hands that had sutured arteries in field hospitals during the Gulf War, now trembled when I tried to hold a coffee cup steady. Age, exhaustion, regret. Take your pick. The apartment was freezing. The landlord had stopped fixing the heating 2 winters ago, right around the time my wife Margaret passed. Cancer, stage 4, the kind that moves fast and shows no mercy, the kind that takes everything you have and then asks for more. $210,000 more, to be exact. I stood, my knees popping like firecrackers, crossed the small room in 3 steps. The black envelope sat there on the scuffed linoleum, elegant and out of place, like a raven perched on a trash heap. Heavy cardstock, expensive. The kind of paper that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. No return address, no name. I picked it up, turned it over. A wax seal on the back, deep crimson, stamped with a symbol I didn't recognize. A raven with spread wings, clutching a crown in its talons. My pulse quickened. You don't live 52 years without developing an instinct for danger, and every nerve in my body was screaming that opening this envelope would change everything. I opened it anyway. Desperate men make dangerous choices. Inside a single card. Cream-colored, embossed with gold lettering that caught the dim light from the street lamp outside my window. Dr. Nathaniel Ashworth, your skills are required for a private consultation. The patient suffers from a rare condition that has proven resistant to conventional treatment. Your expertise in combat surgery and emergency medicine makes you uniquely qualified. Compensation, $30,000 per month, cash, plus full coverage of all outstanding debts upon contract signing. A car will arrive at your residence at 6 a.m. Do not bring medical equipment. Everything you require will be provided. Discretion is mandatory. Decline this offer, and it will not be extended again. Ravenwood Manor, upstate New York. I read it 3 times, $30,000 a month. That was $360,000 a year, more than I'd made in the prime of my career. Enough to clear the debt in 8 months. Enough to get Belle into the Perkins School for the Blind, where they had programs that could teach her to navigate the world without sight. Enough to finally breathe, but the wording made my skin crawl. Rare condition. Resistant to conventional treatment. Discretion is mandatory. I'd spent 30 years in medicine. I knew when a patient file was hiding something. This wasn't hiding. This was buried 6 feet under and covered with concrete. I looked across the room to the corner where my granddaughter slept. Belle, 9 years old, born blind. The only good thing left in my life after Margaret died. She was curled up on the small cot I'd bought from a thrift store, her dark hair spread across the pillow, her small chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of a child who still believed The world was safe. I'd promised Margaret I'd take care of her. I'd promised. The collection agency had called yesterday. If I didn't make a payment by Friday, they were moving to litigation. That meant asset seizure. That meant I'd lose the apartment. That meant Belle would end up in foster care while I figured out how to dig myself out of a hole that just kept getting deeper. I looked back at the card. Ravenwood Manor. I'd never heard of it. I walked to my laptop, an ancient machine that took 3 minutes to boot up. Searched for the name. Nothing. No website, no business listing. No mentions in any medical journals or hospital networks. It was as if the place didn't exist, or as if someone had made very sure it couldn't be found. I set the card down on my small kitchen table, stared at it. The wax seal seemed to glimmer in the darkness, the raven's eyes boring into me. $360,000, a rare condition. Discretion is mandatory. I thought about Margaret in her hospital bed, her hand in mine, her voice a whisper. Promise me you'll take care of Belle. Promise me, Nathaniel. I'd promised, and I was running out of ways to keep that promise. At 5:45 a.m., I packed a small duffel bag, clean shirt, a pair of slacks that weren't too wrinkled, my medical license, though I suspected whoever sent that card already knew more about me than I knew about myself. Belle stirred as I moved around the apartment. "Grandpa?" Her voice was small, sleepy. I knelt beside her cot, brushed the hair from her face. Her eyes opened, milky white and unseeing, but they turned toward me with an accuracy that always unnerved me. It was as if she could see through other means, as if the lack of sight had sharpened every other sense to a razor's edge. "I have to go away for a little while, sweetheart," I said softly. "A job. A good one." "How long?" she asked. I hesitated. The card hadn't specified. 6 months, maybe? A year? "Not long," I lied. "Mrs. Chen next door will check on you. I left money for food." Belle's small hand found mine, her fingers curling around my palm. "You're scared," she said. I froze. "What makes you say that?" "Your heartbeat," she said simply, "and it's faster than normal. And you're breathing funny." I let out a shaky laugh. The kid was too smart for her own good. "I'm fine," I said. "I'm just nerves. New job, you know?" She didn't look convinced, but she nodded. "Okay, Grandpa." I kissed her forehead, stood, grabbed my bag. At exactly 6 a.m., a black car pulled up outside the building. Not a taxi, not an Uber, a Mercedes S-Class, the kind that cost more than I'd make in 5 years, even with this new job. The driver stepped out, tall, pale, wearing a suit that fit too perfectly to be off the rack. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just opened the rear door and gestured for me to enter. I looked back at the apartment building, 4th floor, window on the right. Belle's small shadow moved behind the curtain. I got in the car. The interior smelled of leather and something else, something metallic like the tang of blood in the air after a surgery. The driver closed the door behind me with a soft click that sounded far too much like a cell locking. We drove north. The city gave way to suburbs, then to stretches of forest that grew thicker and darker the farther we traveled. The sun began to rise, pale and hesitant, casting long shadows through the bare trees. I tried to make conversation with the driver, asked where we were going, how long the drive would take, what kind of condition the patient had. He didn't answer, didn't even glance at me in the rearview mirror, just drove, his hand steady on the wheel, his expression carved from stone. After 2 hours, we turned off the main highway onto a private road. No signs, no markers. Just a narrow lane that cut through the forest like a scar. The trees here were different, older, their branches twisted into shapes that didn't seem natural, gnarled, and reaching like arthritic fingers clawing at the sky. And then I saw it. Ravenwood Manor. It rose from the mist like something out of a gothic novel. 3 stories of dark stone and steeply pitched roofs. Towers at each corner, capped with iron spires that pierced the gray morning sky. Windows like black eyes, watching. The car pulled up to the front entrance, a massive wooden door reinforced with iron bands. The driver got out, opened my door. I stepped onto the gravel driveway, my breath misting in the cold November air. The manor was silent. No birds, no wind, just an oppressive quiet that pressed down on my chest like a weight. "This way, Dr. Ashworth." I turned. A woman stood in the doorway, 50s, maybe older, severe gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Black dress that hung on her frame like a funeral shroud. Her eyes were the color of ice. "I'm Mrs. Ashford," she said. Her voice was clipped, precise. British accent, though it sounded old, like she'd learned English from books written a century ago. "Housekeeper, Lord Ravenwood is expecting you." Lord Ravenwood. Not Mr. Ravenwood. Not Doctor. Lord. I followed her inside. The entrance hall was cavernous. A chandelier hung from the ceiling, dripping with crystals that caught the faint light filtering through the windows. The walls were lined with portraits, men and women in period dress, their painted eyes following me as I walked. The air smelled of wood polish and dust, and that same metallic tang from the car. Mrs. Ashford led me down a long corridor, our footsteps echoing on the marble floor. We passed rooms filled with antique furniture, libraries with shelves that stretched to the ceiling, a dining room with a table long enough to seat 30, and everywhere, shadows, thick, heavy, like the darkness here had weight. We stopped at a door at the end of the hall. Mrs. Ashford knocked 3 times, a precise rhythm. Then she opened it and stepped aside. "Lord Ravenwood will see you now," she said. I entered. The room was a study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves crammed with leather-bound volumes. A fireplace, unlit, the hearth cold. And sitting in a high-backed chair by the window, facing away from me, was a man. I couldn't see his face, just the silhouette. Broad shoulders beneath a charcoal suit, dark hair, almost black, cut short and neat. "Dr. Ashworth," the man said. His voice was deep, resonant, like the low note of a cello. It vibrated in my chest. "Thank you for coming. I don't usually make house calls to places that don't exist on any map," I said. A soft laugh. "No, I imagine you don't." He stood, turned to face me. I stopped breathing. The man before me was tall, 6'3", easily. His suit fit him perfectly, tailored to emphasize the lean, powerful build of someone who spent time maintaining their body. But it was his face that froze me in place. He was beautiful. That was the only word for it. High cheekbones. A jawline that could have been carved from marble. Skin so pale it seemed to glow in the dim light. And his eyes. Gold. Not brown. Not hazel. Gold. Molten, burning gold with vertical slits for pupils, like a cat's. "My name is Alaric Ravenwood," he said. He didn't extend his hand. "I am the patient." I swallowed, found my voice. "What's the condition?" He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I'm dying, Dr. Ashworth, very slowly, and I need you to tell me why." He gestured to a desk in the corner. On it, medical equipment, an examination table. Instruments I recognized and some I didn't. "Examine me," he said. "Whatever you find, I need the truth." I set my bag down, washed my hands in a basin that Mrs. Ashford had apparently prepared, put on gloves, professional, clinical. This was what I knew how to do. I approached him. He sat on the examination table, still as a statue. I started with the basics. Pulse. I pressed 2 fingers to his wrist. Nothing. I moved to his neck, pressed harder, searching for the carotid artery. A flutter. Faint. Maybe 20 beats per minute. "When did the symptoms start?" I asked. 4 years ago, he said. I pulled out a stethoscope, listened to his chest. The heartbeat was there, but wrong. Too slow. Too faint. Like listening to a drum from miles away. His skin was cold to the touch. Not cool. Cold. Like touching marble that had been left in a freezer. "Have you been diagnosed with hypothermia?" I asked. "No." "Anemia?" "No." "Heart condition? Arrhythmia?" "No, Dr. Ashworth. I don't have any of the conditions you're thinking of." I frowned, checked his eyes with a pen light. The pupils contracted, but slowly, reluctantly. "Your body temperature is dangerously low," I said. "You should be in a hospital." "I've tried hospitals," he said. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "They can't help me." I stepped back, pulling off the gloves. "I need blood work, full panel, CBC, metabolic, thyroid function." Of course. I prepped a needle, tied a tourniquet around his arm, found a vein, drew blood. It was dark, darker than it should be, almost black. I held the vial up to the light. "Is there something wrong?" Alaric asked. "Your blood," I said slowly. It's not the right color." "No," he agreed. "It isn't." I set the vial down, looked at him, really looked, the pale skin, the cold touch, the slow heartbeat, the eyes. "What are you?" I whispered. He stood, walked to the window, pulled back the heavy curtain. Daylight spilled into the room, but he didn't flinch, didn't burn, just stood there, bathed in pale November sun. "I was born in the year 1374, he said quietly. "I fought in wars you've only read about in history books. I watched the Black Death sweep through Europe. I stood on the fields of Agincourt. I lost my son in the trenches of the Somme in 1916. He turned to face me. "I am 650 years old, Dr. Ashworth, and I am a vampire." My vision swam. I grabbed the edge of the desk to steady myself. Vampire! The word hung in the air between us, impossible and undeniable all at once. "You're insane," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" He took a step toward me. "You've examined me. You've seen the evidence. Heart rate incompatible with life. Body temperature that should have killed me. Blood that doesn't match any known pathology." "There are explanations," I said. "Rare diseases, genetic conditions." "Name one." I couldn't. He took another step. Close now. Close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his eyes swirling like liquid metal. "I brought you here because I am dying," he said. "Something is poisoning me, slowly. I can feel it in my veins, burning like acid. And I need a doctor who can think beyond the limitations of modern medicine. Someone who has seen death up close. Someone who understands that the world is far stranger than the textbooks admit." "Why me?" I asked. "Because you're desperate," he said simply. "Desperate men ask fewer questions. And because your service record shows you saved 37 lives in the Gulf War under impossible conditions. You improvised. You adapted. You didn't panic when the rulebook failed." He walked back to the desk, picked up a folder, handed it to me. I opened it. My medical license, my service records, my debt statements down to the penny. Bell's enrollment application for the Perkins School rejected due to insufficient funds. He knew everything. 6 months, Alaric said. "Live here, examine me, find out what's killing me. In return, I will pay you $30,000 per month. And on the day you sign the contract, every dollar you owe disappears. $210,000, gone, just like that." "And if I refuse?" I asked. His expression didn't change. "Then the car will take you back to Queens. And tomorrow, the collection agency will begin seizing your assets. And Belle will be placed in foster care while you file for bankruptcy. And you will spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have saved her." It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. I looked down at the folder in my hands, at Bell's application, at the rejection stamp. "There are conditions," Alaric said. "3 rules you must follow." I looked up. "Rule 1, he said, you do not enter my private quarters without knocking 3 times. Rule 2, you do not question what I eat or drink. And Rule 3, he paused, looked at me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. If you cut yourself, if you bleed, you run. You run from me as fast as you can and you lock a door between us. Do you understand?" "Why?" I asked. "Because I am a predator, Dr. Ashworth. And when I smell fresh blood, every instinct I have spent 650 years controlling tells me to hunt, to feed, to kill." His eyes flashed, the gold brightening for just a moment. I have not fed on a human being in 108 years, he said. Not since the day I lost my son. But the hunger never goes away. It only sleeps. And your blood, Dr. Ashworth, smells like something I haven't encountered in a very long time. He stepped closer, inhaled. It smells like hope. I should have run. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to get out of that house, to get as far away from this creature as possible. But I didn't, because Bell was counting on me, and because, God help me, I believed him. Where do I sign? I said. Alaric smiled. It was a sad smile, the smile of a man who had just watched someone walk into a trap. He pulled out a contract, 10 pages, dense legal text. I skimmed it, standard confidentiality clauses, non-disclosure agreements, and buried in Section 7, subsection C, a single line that made my blood run cold. The employee agrees to reside on the grounds of Ravenwood Manor for the duration of employment and may not leave the property without express written permission from the employer. I looked up. You're locking me in. I'm locking them out, Alaric corrected. There are others like me, Dr. Ashworth, others who would very much like to know what you are. What I am? I echoed. You'll understand soon enough. I signed. Alaric pulled out a phone, sent a single text. Within 30 seconds, my own phone buzzed. I checked it. An email from the hospital billing department. Dear Dr. Ashworth, your account has been paid in full. Balance, $0. $210,000. Gone. Welcome to Ravenwood Manor, Alaric said. He extended his hand. I shook it. His skin was ice cold, hard, like shaking hands with a marble statue. Mrs. Ashford appeared in the doorway as if summoned by some invisible signal. Show Dr. Ashworth to his quarters, Alaric said, and prepare dinner, something traditional. Mrs. Ashford nodded. Her expression hadn't changed once since I'd arrived. No warmth, no emotion, just cold efficiency. I followed her up a grand staircase to the second floor. She led me to a room at the end of the hall. It was larger than my entire apartment in Queens. 4-poster bed, a desk by the window, a private bathroom with a clawfoot tub. Dinner is at 8, Mrs. Ashford said. Do not be late. Lord Ravenwood does not tolerate tardiness. She left, closing the door behind her. I stood in the center of the room, my bag still in my hand. What the hell had I just agreed to? I walked to the window, looked out over the grounds of Ravenwood Manor. Acres of forest stretched in every direction, the trees bare and skeletal against the gray sky. No neighbors, no lights, no signs of civilization. I was alone in a mansion with a vampire who claimed to be dying. I pulled out my phone, thought about calling Belle, telling her I was okay. No signal, of course. I sat on the edge of the bed, dropped my head into my hands. 6 months. I could survive 6 months. I had to. Dinner was served in a dining room that could have hosted a state banquet. The table was polished mahogany, long enough to seat 20. Candles flickered in silver candelabras. I sat at one end. Alaric sat at the other, 30 feet away. Mrs. Ashford brought out the food, roast chicken, potatoes. Vegetables that looked like they'd been grown in a garden that hadn't existed for a century. I ate. Alaric didn't. Instead, he sat with a crystal glass filled with a dark red liquid. I didn't ask what it was. Rule 2, do not question what I eat or drink. You're wondering why I'm not eating, Alaric said. His voice carried easily across the distance. It's none of my business, I said. No, he agreed. But I'll tell you anyway. I haven't needed food in 600 years. My body doesn't process it. But I do need... He lifted the glass. Sustenance. Blood. He was drinking blood. I set down my fork, my appetite gone. Synthetic, Alaric said, as if reading my mind. Developed by a pharmaceutical company I own. Iron-rich protein synthesis. It keeps me alive. Or it did. Did? I asked. 4 years ago it started tasting wrong. Metallic. Bitter. And my strength began to fade. I've been declining ever since. You think it's poisoned? I know it is, he said. I just don't know by whom. Who prepares it? My financial advisor, Gideon Marlowe. He's a vampire of 280 years who has served me for 260 of them. I let that sink in. 260 years. You trust him? I did, Alaric said. Now I'm not so sure. He set down the glass, stood, walked the length of the table toward me. I resisted the urge to push back my chair. Tomorrow, he said, you will begin your examination, full diagnostics. I want to know what's in my system, and I want to know who put it there. And if I find nothing? Then you'll keep looking, he said. Because if I die, Dr. Ashworth, the protections I've placed on this manor die with me, and there are creatures far worse than me who would very much like to meet the man whose blood smells like hope. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving me alone with the candles and the shadows. I sat there for a long time. Finally I stood, made my way back to my room. Sleep didn't come. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old house settle and creak. Somewhere above me I heard footsteps, slow, measured, pacing. Alaric, 650 years old, dying, and I was supposed to save him. I closed my eyes, thought of Belle. Promise me you'll take care of her. I'd promised. And I was going to keep that promise, no matter what it cost. The wine incident happened on my third night. I'd settled into a routine. Mornings in the medical lab Alaric had provided, analyzing his blood samples. Afternoons reviewing his medical journals, 6 centuries of documented illness and recovery, and every evening at 6 p.m., the ritual. A courier arrived, different young man each time, never spoke, handed Mrs. Ashford a reinforced cooler marked with a biohazard symbol. Left. Inside, vacuum-sealed bags of dark red liquid. My job was to decant one bag into a crystal carafe, warm it to exactly 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and deliver it to Alaric's study. On the third night, Mrs. Ashford was carrying the carafe across the study. I was there to observe Alaric's reaction, to document any adverse effects. She stumbled. I saw it happen. Her foot caught on the edge of the Persian rug. Not an accident. Too deliberate. Too calculated. The carafe tilted. The dark liquid splashed across Alaric's shoulder and chest, soaking into the immaculate fabric of his charcoal suit. The crystal hit the table edge and shattered, sending shards flying. I moved on instinct, reached out to catch the jagged glass. A sharp shard sliced deep into my palm. "Damn!" I hissed, clutching my hand to my chest. Blood welled up, dark and rich, dripping onto the expensive rug. The silence that followed was absolute, heavy, physical, like the air had been sucked out of the room. Alaric stood slowly. I backed away, my medical training screaming at me to apply pressure to the wound, but I couldn't look away from him. He wasn't looking at the ruined suit, wasn't looking at the shattered crystal. He was staring at my hand, at the blood dripping from my palm. His eyes, those strange gold eyes, blew wide. The pupils expanded until they nearly swallowed the iris. His nostrils flared. He took a step toward me. I took a step back. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I'll clean this up. He grabbed my wrist. His skin was ice cold, hard as marble. His grip was gentle but immovable, like being held by a statue. He brought my bleeding hand up to his face. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the bite, for the pain. But he didn't bite. He inhaled, long, deep. His eyes fluttered shut as if he were smelling a memory. "Who sent you?" he growled. His voice was different, lower, rougher. The civilized veneer stripped away to reveal something ancient and dangerous. "Nobody," I said. My voice shook. "I'm just a doctor. You hired me." His eyes snapped open. The gold was swirling now, darkening to amber. "Your blood," he whispered. "It doesn't smell like food." He inhaled again, and I saw his hands trembling. "It smells like—" He released my wrist abruptly, as if burned, turned away from me. "Get out," he commanded. "Now." I didn't need to be told twice. I ran. Through the study door, down the corridor, up the stairs to my room. I locked the door behind me, grabbed the first aid kit I'd brought, wrapped my hand with shaking fingers. My heart was hammering against my ribs. What the hell had just happened? I stood there in the darkness, listening, waiting for footsteps, for the door to break down, for the monster to come finish what it had started, but nothing happened. The manor was silent. I didn't sleep that night. When dawn came, I finally allowed myself to breathe. A soft knock on my door made me jump. "Dr. Ashworth?" Mrs. Ashford's voice, calm, controlled. "Lord Ravenwood requests your presence in his study, immediately." I washed my face, changed my shirt, wrapped my hand in fresh gauze, walked downstairs on legs that felt like lead. Alaric stood by the window of his study, his back to me. He wore a fresh suit, navy blue this time. The ruined one from last night was nowhere to be seen. "Sit," he said, without turning. I sat. The silence stretched. Finally he spoke. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "Last night I lost control. That hasn't happened in a very long time." "What did you smell?" I asked. He turned to face me. His eyes were back to their normal gold, but there was something haunted in them. "A woman," he said. "A woman who died 300 years ago. Her name was Isabelle Rousseau. She was my wife." I felt my breath catch. "Your blood," he continued, "carries her scent, not because you're her reincarnation, but because you share her bloodline. Isabelle had a sister who fled France during the Revolution. The sister's descendants scattered across the world. One line ended up in America, in Chicago." "My mother," I whispered. "She was from Chicago." "Yes," Alaric said. "And your mother, your grandmother, all the way back, carry a very rare genetic trait. It's called Vitalis blood." He walked to his desk, pulled out an ancient book, opened it to a page with an illuminated manuscript. "Vitalis," he read, "from the Latin for life. 1 in 10 million humans carries this blood. It has unique properties." "What kind of properties?" "It can heal vampires," he said, "grant us strength we haven't possessed in centuries, allow us to walk in sunlight without burning." He looked at me with an intensity that made me want to lean back. "You're not just a physician, Dr. Ashworth. You're a miracle, and you're in terrible danger." The first week at Ravenwood Manor passed in a haze of medical tests and mounting dread. I'd learned that silence was the most valuable currency in Alaric's world. He didn't speak unless necessary, didn't explain unless pressed. And every evening he drank from that crystal carafe with the same resignation a condemned man might face his last meal. But I was a doctor, and doctors solve puzzles. The blood samples I'd taken from Alaric showed abnormalities I'd never seen. His white blood cell count was almost non-existent. His platelets were crystallized, forming geometric patterns under the microscope that shouldn't have been possible. And there was something else, a metallic compound I couldn't identify. I spent hours in the lab running spectral analyses, comparing his current blood to samples from his medical journals dating back decades. The compound wasn't there in samples from 5 years ago, 4 years ago, it appeared. Trace amounts. Each year, the concentration increased. Someone was poisoning him, slowly, methodically, and I was going to prove it. November 19th, 20:24 to 34 a.m. I couldn't sleep. The pieces were there, scattered across my mind like fragments of shrapnel. I just needed to put them together. I left my room, moved silently down the corridor. The manor was dark, the only light coming from sconces that flickered with what looked like actual candlelight, though I suspected they were electric. I made my way to the medical wing, unlocked the door with the key Alaric had given me. Inside, I pulled out the latest vial of Alaric's blood I'd drawn yesterday, set it under the high-powered spectrometer, a machine that probably cost more than my house in Queens. The analysis took 20 minutes. When the results appeared on the screen, my hands went cold. Platinum. Not just traces, significant levels, enough to be lethal to a human and apparently toxic even to a vampire. Platinum oxide, to be precise. A compound that didn't occur naturally. It had to be synthesized, added deliberately. I printed the results, stared at them. Someone had been poisoning Alaric for 4 years, and the only person with access to his blood supply was Gideon Marlowe, the financial advisor who'd served him for 260 years. A sound behind me. I spun. Mrs. Ashford stood in the doorway. Her expression was cold, unreadable. "Working late, Dr. Ashworth?" she asked. "Couldn't sleep," I said, casually folding the printout and slipping it into my pocket. Thought I'd review some samples. Her eyes flicked to the spectrometer, to the vial of blood still on the stage. "Lord Ravenwood doesn't like people in his medical wing unsupervised," she said. "He gave me a key," I replied. "That seems like supervision enough." We stared at each other, two people playing a game neither of us had acknowledged yet. "It's late," Mrs. Ashford said finally. "You should rest. Tomorrow will be demanding." She turned and left, her footsteps echoing down the hall. I waited until the sound faded. Then I locked the door, grabbed a second vial of Alaric's blood from the refrigeration unit, and hid it in my room. Insurance. If something happened to the original sample, I'd still have proof. November 20th, 2024, 6 p.m. The evening ritual. Decant the blood. Warm it to 98.6 degrees. Deliver it to Alaric's study. But tonight, my hands were steadier than they'd been all week. Tonight I had answers. I knocked 3 times. Entered. Alaric sat by the window staring out at the forest. The sun had just set, the sky bruised purple and orange. "Your carafe, my lord," I said. He turned, frowned. "You've never called me that before." "Seemed appropriate," I said, "given that you're apparently royalty among vampires." A small smile. "Not royalty, just old. Age commands a certain respect in my world." I set the carafe on the low table beside his chair, pulled the printout from my pocket, placed it next to the carafe. "You're being poisoned," I said. Alaric went very still. "Explain." "Platinum oxide, in your synthetic blood. It's been accumulating in your system for 4 years. That's why you're weak, why the synthesis tastes wrong. Someone is killing you slowly." He picked up the printout, studied it. His expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened, the gold deepening to amber. "Gideon," he said softly. "He controls your supply," I said. "He's the only one with access." "Why?" Alaric asked. "Why would he betray me after 260 years? I'd thought about that, spent hours turning it over in my mind. "Money," I said. "Power. Inheritance. If you die, what happens to your estate?" Alaric was silent for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to his desk, pulled out a document, a will. "Under the terms of my will," he said, "Gideon receives 40% of my estate upon my death. Approximately $2.4 billion. The number hung in the air. "That's motive enough," I said. "Indeed." Alaric set down the will. "But Gideon knows I would name a new executor if I suspected betrayal. He's been careful, patient. Too careful," I said. "The platinum levels suggest he started small, tiny doses, building up over years so you wouldn't notice the decline all at once." Alaric picked up the carafe, stared at the dark liquid inside. "And tonight's batch?" he asked. "I haven't tested it yet," I said, "but I can." "Do it." I took the carafe back to the medical wing, ran the same spectral analysis, platinum oxide, same levels as before. I returned to Alaric's study, showed him the results. He looked at the printout for a long time. Then he did something that shocked me. He poured the entire carafe into a plant by the window. "No more," he said quietly. "Not until we know the source is clean." "You'll starve," I said. "I've starved before," Alaric replied. "I can last 3 weeks without feeding. That gives us time." "Time for what?" "To find proof," he said. "Irrefutable proof that Gideon is behind this. And then—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Over the next 2 days, I became an archaeologist of Alaric's past. His medical journals were treasure troves of information, 6 centuries of meticulous documentation, every illness, every injury, every fluctuation in his condition. But it was the entries from 1916 that painted the clearest picture of who he'd been. Who he'd lost. November 13th, 1916. The telegram arrived today. Captain Edmund Ravenwood, killed in action at the Somme. My son, my boy. I stood in the trench where he fell. The mud still held his blood. I could smell it beneath the cordite and decay. I wanted to scream, to rage, to burn the entire world down. Instead, I made a vow. No more killing, no more feeding on humans. If my son could die for a cause he believed in, then I could die to the hunger rather than take another innocent life. The entries that followed chronicled his withdrawal, the agony of denying his nature, the hallucinations that came with starvation. But he'd survived. He'd found Dr. Henrik Voss in Switzerland, a physician who'd developed the first synthetic blood formula in 1920. It had kept Alaric alive for over a century, until Gideon started poisoning it. I flipped to the more recent journals, found something that made my blood run cold. January 3rd, 2020. The synthesis tastes bitter. Spoke with Gideon. He assures me the formula hasn't changed, but I can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. March 15th, 2020. Strength declining. Can barely lift objects I once handled with ease. Gideon insists it's age, but vampires don't age this way. July 22nd, 2021. Burning sensation in veins. Persistent. Gideon ordered new batch from the Swiss facility. No improvement. If anything, worse. December 1st, 2023. Confronted Gideon about the supply chain. He seemed offended, showed me documentation proving the Swiss facility uses the original Voss formula. Perhaps I'm paranoid. 260 years of loyalty should count for something. Paranoid. No, Alaric, you were right to suspect. I pulled out my phone, took photos of the relevant journal pages. Then I did something risky. I searched Alaric's study for financial records, found them in a locked cabinet. The lock was old, simple. I picked it with a tension wrench I'd fashioned from a paperclip, a skill I'd learned in the Gulf when we needed to access locked medical supplies. Inside, ledgers, transaction records, going back decades. I scanned through them, looking for anything related to Gideon, and there it was. 3 years ago, Gideon had opened a private account in the Cayman Islands. He'd been siphoning funds from Ravenwood Industries, small amounts at first, 50,000 here, 100,000 there. By last year, he was moving millions, preparing for an inheritance he'd decided to accelerate. I photographed everything, locked the cabinet, made sure everything was exactly as I'd found it. When I turned around, Alaric was standing in the doorway. I froze. "Find what you were looking for?" he asked. His voice was neutral, but his eyes were sharp. "Yes," I said. I wasn't going to lie. "Gideon's been embezzling from you for 3 years, preparing for your death." I handed him my phone, showed him the photos. Alaric looked through them in silence. His jaw tightened. 260 years, he said finally. I trusted him with everything. "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't be." He handed back my phone. "You did what I hired you to do. You found the truth." He walked to the window, looked out at the darkness. "The question is," he said, "what do we do with it?" Before I could answer, a sound cut through the night, glass shattering, downstairs. Then a scream, high, piercing. Mrs. Ashford. Twist. Number 3. Constantine's attack. We ran. Alaric moved faster than I could track, a blur of motion down the stairs. I followed as quickly as I could, my heart hammering. The entrance hall was chaos. 3 figures stood in the wreckage of the front door. No, not human figures. Their eyes glowed in the darkness. Red. Bright, burning red. Vampires. Mrs. Ashford lay crumpled against the wall, blood streaming from a gash on her forehead. She was conscious but dazed. The vampire in the center was tall, broad-shouldered, with pale blonde hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from ice. He wore a long black coat, military style, with medals I didn't recognize. "Where is Ravenwood?" he demanded. His accent was thick, Eastern European, Russian maybe. "Who the hell are you?" I asked. He turned those red eyes on me, smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Konstantin Volkov," he said, "Lord of the East Side Territories. And you, Doctor, are trespassing in very dangerous waters." One of his companions moved toward me, inhumanly fast. I didn't think, just reacted. Years of combat training kicked in. I sidestepped, brought up the scalpel I'd instinctively grabbed from my pocket earlier that evening, slashed across his reaching arm. He howled, stumbled back. The wound smoked, silver-burning vampire flesh. Silver scalpel. Alaric had given me a silver scalpel. Konstantin's eyes widened. "Clever," he said, "but one blade won't save you." "No," a voice said from the top of the staircase, "but I will." Alaric stood there, backlit by candlelight. He looked different, dangerous. His eyes burned gold, and when he smiled, I saw fangs, long, white, lethal. "This is my territory, Volkov," Alaric said. His voice was cold, absolute. "You have no claim here." "Your territory?" Konstantin laughed. "You're dying, Ravenwood. Everyone knows. The council knows. And when you're gone, your holdings become open season." "I'm not dead yet." "No," Konstantin agreed. "But you will be soon. And I've come to speed the process along." He nodded to his companions. They attacked. What happened next was beyond my comprehension. Alaric moved like liquid shadow. One moment at the top of the stairs, the next in the center of the hall. He caught the first vampire by the throat, lifted him off the ground, and threw him through the wall. Literally through it. The vampire's body crashed through plaster and wood, disappearing into the room beyond. The second vampire pulled a blade, lunged. Alaric sidestepped, grabbed the vampire's wrist, twisted. The bone snapped with a sound like a gunshot. The blade clattered to the floor. But Konstantin was faster, older, stronger. He hit Alaric with the force of a freight train, driving him back into the stone fireplace. The mantel cracked. They grappled, inhumanly fast, a blur of movement and snarling rage. I stood there frozen, useless. Then I saw it. The blade the second vampire had dropped. Silver, curved, wicked sharp. I picked it up. Konstantin had Alaric pinned against the wall, one hand around his throat. "You should have stayed strong, old friend," he hissed. "But you got soft, sentimental. And now," I drove the blade into his back, not deep. I didn't have the strength or the angle, but deep enough. Konstantin roared, released Alaric, spun toward me. His eyes were full of murder. Alaric grabbed him from behind, wrenched his arms back. "Run," Alaric commanded me. "Now!" I ran. Behind me, I heard sounds. Terrible sounds. Breaking bone, tearing flesh. A scream that cut off abruptly. Then silence. I stood in the corridor, breathing hard, the silver blade slick with black blood in my hand. Alaric appeared in the doorway. His suit was torn. Blood, dark and wrong, stained his shirt. But he was standing. "They're gone," he said. "Dead? No, but they won't be back tonight." He looked at me, really looked. "You fought," he said. There was something like respect in his voice. "I was a field surgeon in the Gulf," I said. "We got attacked more than once. I learned to handle myself." Clearly. Mrs. Ashford appeared, holding a cloth to her bleeding forehead. "The wards are broken," she said. "They'll try again." "I know," Alaric said. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Konstantin wasn't after me," he said quietly. "He was after you." My blood went cold. "Why would he want me?" Alaric didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to where I'd cut the vampire with my scalpel, knelt, touched the blood on the floor. Vampire blood, black, thick, and mixed with it a few drops of red. My blood. I'd cut myself during the fight, hadn't even noticed. Alaric brought his finger to his nose, inhaled. His eyes closed. His expression shifted to something I couldn't name. Longing, pain, wonder. "Your blood," he whispered. Konstantin smelled it, even a few drops. He came for the Vitalis. He opened his eyes, looked at me with an intensity that made me want to step back. "Someone told him?" Alaric said. "Someone revealed what you are, and now every vampire in the region will know." "Who?" I demanded. "Who told them?" As if in answer, a sound cut through the night. A crow, cawing. But wrong. Too loud, too sharp. Alaric's face went pale. He walked to the shattered front door, looked out into the darkness. On the gatepost, a dead crow. Nailed through the wings, spread like a grotesque crucifix. Tied to its leg, a scroll sealed with black wax. Alaric retrieved it, broke the seal, read. His hands trembled. "What is it?" I asked. He handed me the scroll. The text was in Latin, but beneath it, a translation in modern English. "The High Council of the Eternal Night hereby summons Lord Alaric Ravenwood and the human known as Dr. Nathaniel Ashworth to the Undercroft for judgment regarding violation of the masquerade. Failure to appear within 3 days will result in authorized extermination. Signed, Lord Aurelius." First of the council, I read it twice. "The masquerade?" I asked. "The law that keeps vampires secret from humanity," Alaric said. His voice was hollow. "By bringing you here, by allowing you to know what I am, I've broken it." "But you saved my life. You protected me." "It doesn't matter. The council doesn't care about intent, only results." He looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw fear in those gold eyes. "They'll give us 2 choices," he said. "It'd kill you and share your blood among the elders, or turn you into one of us, which would destroy the Vitalis properties and eliminate the threat." "Both options end with me dead," I said. "Yes." I looked down at the scroll, at the seal, at the words that had just condemned me. "Who told them?" I asked again. Alaric was silent for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, "Only 3 people knew about you. Me, Mrs. Ashford, and Gideon." Mrs. Ashford stepped forward. "I would never betray Lord Ravenwood." "No," Alaric agreed. "You wouldn't." Which left Gideon, the man who'd been poisoning Alaric for 4 years, the man who stood to inherit billions, the man who'd sent Constantine to finish what the Platinum hadn't, and now the man who'd just sentenced us both to death by alerting the council. "We have 3 days," Alaric said. 3 days to reach the Undercroft, stand trial, and somehow convince the most powerful vampires in existence not to kill you. "And if we don't go?" "Then every vampire in North America is authorized to hunt us down." I thought of Belle, safe in Queens, with Mrs. Chen next door. If I died, she'd lose the only family she had left. "There's another option," I said. Alaric looked at me. "What?" "We prove Gideon's betrayal in front of the council, turn this from a trial about me into a trial about him. That's nearly impossible." "Nearly," I agreed, "but not completely." I met his eyes. "You hired me because I saved 37 lives under impossible conditions," I said. "Because I improvised. Because I didn't panic when the rulebook failed." Alaric smiled grimly. "What do you need?" "Everything we have. The Platinum analysis, the financial records, proof that connects Gideon to Constantine's attack. You'll have it." November 22nd, 2024, 11:47 p.m. We spent the next day preparing. Alaric had contacts in the vampire world, informants who owed him favors. By midnight we had our proof. Gideon had contacted Constantine 3 months ago, offered him 50% of Alaric's East Side holdings if he eliminated the weakened vampire and secured the Vitalis human. Constantine had attacked on Gideon's orders, but we needed more. We needed to catch Gideon in an act that the council couldn't ignore. "There's one way," Alaric said. We were in his study, surrounded by documents and evidence. We let him think he's won. "What do you mean?" "I stopped drinking the synthetic blood entirely. Let myself grow weaker. Gideon will think the poison is finally working. He'll get careless, make a mistake." "That's suicide," I said. "You're already weak." "It's a calculated risk," Alaric replied. "And I have you, Vitalis blood. If things get desperate, I can—" He trailed off. "No," I said firmly. "We're not going there, not unless there's absolutely no other choice." Agreed. We worked through the night building our case. By dawn, we had everything we needed: evidence of the platinum poisoning, financial records showing embezzlement, communications between Gideon and Constantine, enough to convict him before the council. I was packing the documents into a secure case when my phone rang. I pulled it out, frowned. Signal. For the first time since I'd arrived at Ravenwood Manor, I had cell signal. The number was blocked. I answered. "Dr. Ashworth." The voice was smooth, cultured, male. "Who is this?" "A concerned party. I'm calling about your granddaughter." My blood turned to ice. "Belle? What about her?" "She's safe, for now, but I'm afraid Mrs. Chen had a little accident. Nothing serious, just enough to ensure Belle is unattended." I gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. "If you touch her—" "I won't," the voice said, "as long as you cooperate. You see, Dr. Ashworth, you have something the council wants. And I have something you want. A simple trade." "What do you want?" "Bring yourself to the Undercroft, alone. No evidence, no accusations. Just a Vitalis human surrendering himself for judgment. Do that, and Belle goes back to Mrs. Chen safe and sound. And if I don't? Then I'm afraid accidents happen, especially to blind 9-year-old girls." The line went dead. I stood there, the phone in my hand, my world collapsing. Alaric saw my expression. "What happened?" "Belle," I whispered. "They have Belle." I showed him the phone. Alaric's face went from concern to furious in an instant. "Gideon," he said. It wasn't a question. "He's using her as leverage, wants me to surrender at the Undercroft. No evidence, no defense. It's a trap." "I know," I said, "but she's my granddaughter. I can't—" My phone buzzed. A text message, a photo. Belle, sitting in what looked like a basement, her hands bound, her eyes wide with fear, and below it a message. "Tick-tock, doctor. The Undercroft awaits. Come alone or she dies. You have until midnight tomorrow. G.M. Gideon Marlowe." He'd taken everything from me. My freedom, my choices, and now, my family. I looked at Alaric. "We go to the Undercroft. It's what he wants." "I know," I said, "but I made a promise, and I'm keeping it." Alaric studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Then we go together," he said. "And God help anyone who stands between us and that child." Outside, the dead crow twisted in the wind. The war had escalated. Belle was the hostage. And in 2 days, we'd walk into the lion's den with nothing but truth and desperation. I thought of Captain Williams, my commanding officer in the Gulf. A soldier doesn't abandon his brothers. You stand, you fight, and you trust the man next to you. I looked at Alaric. We weren't brothers by blood, but we were brothers in this fight, and we were going to get Belle back, or die trying. They say the truth will set you free. They don't tell you that first. It will drag you 300 feet underground into a chamber where creatures older than nations will decide if you deserve to live. The Undercroft wasn't on any map, wasn't accessible by any conventional means. It existed in the spaces between the modern world and the ancient one, a pocket of history that had refused to die. Getting there required a journey I'll never forget. November 23rd, 2024, 4:17 a.m. We left Ravenwood Manor in the hour before dawn. Alaric, Mrs. Ashford, and myself, traveling in a black SUV with the windows tinted so dark they looked like sheets of obsidian. Alaric drove. He hadn't fed in 5 days now. I could see the toll it was taking. His skin had gone from pale to translucent, veins visible beneath like a roadmap of suffering. His hands gripped the steering wheel with enough force to dent the metal, but his eyes were focused, determined. We had our evidence: the platinum analysis, the financial records, communications between Gideon and Constantine, and we had a child to save. We drove south, back toward New York City, but we didn't take the highways. Instead, Alaric navigated through back roads, service routes, paths that seemed to exist only for those who knew where to look. "The Undercroft is beneath Lower Manhattan," he explained. His voice was rougher than usual, strained. "Built during the colonial era, the vampires who came to the New World needed a place to convene, to establish law and order among our kind. "How many vampires are there?" I asked. "In North America? Perhaps 3,000. Worldwide, 50,000. We're not common, Dr. Ashworth. We're rare, and we've survived by being very, very careful about who knows we exist. Until me. Until you." Mrs. Ashford sat in the back seat, silent. She'd barely spoken since the attack. Her loyalty to Alaric was absolute, but I could see the worry in her eyes. She knew what was coming. We reached the city as the sun rose, painting the skyline in shades of gold and crimson. Alaric pulled into an underground parking garage in Tribeca, descended 7 levels below street level. At the bottom, a concrete wall, blank, unmarked. Alaric parked, stepped out, placed his palm against the wall. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the concrete shifted, groaned. A section of wall, 20 feet wide and 12 feet tall, slid inward with the sound of stone grinding against stone. Beyond it, darkness and the smell of earth and time. "Stay close," Alaric said. We entered. The tunnel was lit by gas lamps, their flames flickering in brass sconces that looked like they'd been forged in the 1700s. The walls were rough-hewn stone, wet with condensation. Our footsteps echoed. We walked for what felt like miles, down, always down. The temperature dropped with each step until I could see my breath misting in the air. Finally, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber, the Undercroft. It was a Roman amphitheater carved from living rock. Stone benches rose in concentric circles, disappearing into shadows above. In the center, a floor of black marble, polished to a mirror shine. And at the far end, 5 thrones, iron, massive, ancient. Seated in them were the elders of the High Council. I'd never felt so small in my life. The council, Lord Aurelius sat in the center throne. He was old, not in appearance. His face was that of a man in his prime, perhaps 40, with sharp features and dark hair shot through with silver. But his eyes betrayed him. They were the color of storm clouds, and when they looked at you, you felt the weight of 14 centuries pressing down. To his left sat Elder Morgana, a woman with hair like spun platinum, wearing robes of deep purple. Her face was beautiful and terrible, ageless and knowing. To Aurelius's right, Elder Casimir, broad-shouldered, with a scarred face and the bearing of a warrior. He wore armor beneath his robes. I could see the glint of it at his collar. And, flanking them, 2 others whose names I never learned, silent, watching. The benches around the chamber were filled. Vampires, hundreds of them. Some looked young, teenagers frozen in immortality. Others looked ancient, their faces lined with the weight of centuries. All of them were staring at me. In the center of the marble floor stood 2 figures. Konstantin Volkov, his arm bandaged from where I'd cut him. He smiled when he saw me, a predator's smile. And beside him, Gideon Marlowe. I'd never met the man in person, but I recognized him from the descriptions in Alaric's journals. Tall, slender, a vampire of 280 years who had served Alaric for 260 of them, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a car. His hair was dark, swept back from a face that could have been handsome if not for the cruelty in his eyes. He looked at Alaric with something like pity. Then his eyes found mine, and he smiled. "Lord Ravenwood," Aurelius's voice boomed through the chamber. It wasn't loud, but it carried, resonating off the stone like the toll of a bell. "You stand accused of violating the masquerade, of revealing our nature to a human. How do you plead?" Alaric stepped forward. His shoulders were straight, his head high. He looked every inch the king he'd been called. "I plead necessity," he said. The human Dr. Nathaniel Ashworth was brought to Ravenwood Manor to diagnose a medical condition that was killing me. He learned what I am through the course of his examination. I did not volunteer the information. "And yet," Aurelius said, "he knows. The law is clear. Any human who discovers our nature must be eliminated or turned. There are no exceptions. I invoke the physician's exemption, Alaric said. Medical professionals who treat our kind in good faith are bound by contracts and blood oaths before they ever meet a vampire, Morgana interrupted. Her voice was silk over steel. Your doctor, Ashworth, signed no such contract, took no such oath. He is unbound, uncontrolled, dangerous. He's also Vitalis, Constantine said, stepping forward. His blood grants power beyond measure. If he's allowed to live, free and unturned, he becomes a target for every rogue vampire on the continent, a threat to the masquerade itself. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Vitalis. The word spread like wildfire. Aurelius raised a hand. Silence fell immediately. Is this true, Ravenwood? He asked. Is the human Vitalis? Alaric hesitated, then nodded. Yes. The murmurs became shouts. Vampires stood, gesturing, arguing. The chamber erupted in chaos. Aurelius slammed his hand against the arm of his throne. The sound cracked like thunder, and the stone beneath his palm fractured. Silence. The council will deliberate, Aurelius said. Lord Ravenwood, Dr. Ashworth, you will wait. We were escorted to a side chamber, a small stone room with a single bench. The door closed behind us with a finality that made my chest tighten. Alaric sat heavily. He looked exhausted. What are they deciding? I asked. Your fate, Alaric said simply. Mine is already determined. I broke the law. I'll face consequences. But you, he trailed off. What are the options? I pressed. 2, Alaric said. They kill you here, drain your blood and distribute it among the elders to strengthen the council. Or I turn you, make you a vampire. The Vitalis properties would die with your humanity, and you'd become just another immortal. No threat. Both options mean I die, I said. In a sense, yes. I thought of Belle, bound, terrified, somewhere in this maze of stone. I thought of Margaret, the promise I'd made. There has to be another way, I said. There is, a voice said from the doorway. I spun. Gideon Marlowe stood there, flanked by 2 vampire guards. He smiled, and it was the smile of a man who'd already won. Trial by combat, Gideon said. The right of Ash, ancient law. If Lord Ravenwood wishes to protect his pet human, he can fight for that right. Get out, Alaric growled. Come now, old friend, Gideon said. You know I'm right. Challenge the council's champion. Win, and the human goes free. Lose, and you both burn. He stepped closer, and I could smell something on him. Sharp. Chemical. Platinum. Of course, Gideon continued. In your current state, weakened as you are, I doubt you'd last 30 seconds against the executioner. Alaric stood, moved faster than I could track. He had Gideon by the throat, slammed against the wall. You did this, Alaric hissed. The platinum, the poison. You've been killing me for 4 years. Gideon's eyes widened in mock surprise. Careful, Ravenwood. Accusations without proof are dangerous. I have proof, I said. I pulled the printout from my pocket, the spectral analysis showing platinum oxide in Alaric's blood. You're the only one with access to his synthetic blood supply, I said. You've been dosing it, slowly, methodically, killing him so you could inherit his estate. Gideon looked at the printout. Then he laughed. You think the council cares? He said. Ravenwood broke the masquerade. That's the crime they're judging. My actions, even if you could prove them, are a private matter between servant and master. Billions of dollars, I said. That's not a private matter. That's motive for murder. Prove it, Gideon challenged. The door opened. A guard stepped in. The council has reached a verdict, he said. We were brought back to the main chamber. The elders sat in judgment, their faces carved from stone. Aurelius spoke. Doctor, Nathaniel Ashworth, you stand before this council as a violation of our most sacred law. You possess knowledge of our existence and blood that makes you a weapon in the wrong hands. The council has determined you cannot be allowed to remain free. My heart hammered in my chest. However, Aurelius continued, we recognize Lord Ravenwood's long service to vampire kind and his claim of necessity. Therefore, we offer 2 choices. He held up one finger. Choice 1. You are executed here tonight. Your blood will be shared among the elders to strengthen the council." He held up a second finger. "Choice 2. Lord Ravenwood turns you. You become one of us. Your Vitalis properties die with your humanity, eliminating the threat." "Both choices are death sentences," I said. My voice was steady. Surprising, given the fear coursing through me. "Yes," Aurelius agreed, "they are." "Then I choose a third option," Alaric said. The chamber went silent. "There is no third option," Morgana said. "There is," Alaric replied. "Trial by combat. The right of Ash. I invoke it." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even the elders looked surprised. "The right of Ash hasn't been invoked in a century," Casimir said, but there was interest in his voice. A warrior's interest. "The law is clear," Alaric said. "Any vampire may challenge the council's judgment through combat. If I win, the human goes free. If I lose, we both accept the council's sentence." Aurelius leaned back in his throne, steepled his fingers. "You wish to fight for this human's life?" he asked. "I do." "You are weakened, poisoned. If your physician's claims are true, the executioner will destroy you in minutes." "Perhaps," Alaric said, "but it's my right to try." Aurelius looked at me. "And you, Dr. Ashworth, do you accept this arrangement?" I looked at Alaric, saw the determination in his eyes. The willingness to die for a man he'd known for 3 weeks. "No," I said. Everyone turned to stare at me. "No?" Aurelius repeated. "With respect, Lord Aurelius," I said, "there's information the council doesn't have, information that changes everything." I pulled out the evidence. The platinum analysis, the financial records, the communications between Gideon and Constantine. Lord Ravenwood is being poisoned. Platinum oxide, introduced into his synthetic blood supply over a period of 4 years. The only person with access to that supply is his financial advisor, Gideon Marlowe. I pointed at Gideon standing in the gallery. "And the motive? Gideon stands to inherit 40% of Ravenwood's estate upon his death, approximately $2.4 billion. The chamber erupted. Aurelius raised his hand for silence, looked at Gideon. "These are serious accusations, Marlowe. How do you respond?" Gideon stepped forward, utterly calm. "They're lies," he said simply. "The human is desperate. He'll say anything to save himself." "I have proof," I said. I held up the documents. Spectral analysis of Lord Ravenwood's blood showing platinum oxide. Financial records showing Gideon has been embezzling funds for 3 years. And communications proving Gideon hired Konstantin Volkov to attack Ravenwood Manor and capture the Vitalis human. I looked at Konstantin. "Isn't that right, Volkov? Gideon offered you 50% of the East Side holdings if you eliminated Ravenwood and secured me." Konstantin's red eyes went wide. He looked at Gideon, at the council, at the hundreds of vampires watching. He was caught. "It's true," Konstantin said quietly. "Marlowe approached me 3 months ago, promised me territory if I helped him." The chamber exploded in shouts. Gideon's calm facade cracked. 260 years I served him," he shouted, rage finally breaking through. 260 years of loyalty, and what did I get? Promises, empty promises of inheritance someday. I'm not immortal like you elders. I don't have forever. He was unraveling. "The Vitalis blood would have kept Ravenwood alive another 1,000 years, Gideon continued. Another 1,000 years of me serving, waiting, hoping. I had to act. I had to—" He stopped, realized what he'd said. The chamber was silent. Aurelius looked at Gideon with cold fury. "Betrayal of one's master is a capital offense," he said. "Poisoning a member of this council is treason. Gideon Marlowe, you are sentenced to death." "Wait," Gideon said, backing away. "I demand trial by combat. The right of Ash applies to me as well." Aurelius smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Granted," he said. "You may fight alongside the executioner, against Lord Ravenwood and his physician." My blood ran cold. "What?" I said. "Doctor, Ashworth has proven himself resourceful," Aurelius said. And he carries Vitalis blood. It seems fitting that he should fight for his freedom rather than simply receive it as a gift. I looked at Alaric. He looked at me. We were going to die. But first, I said, my voice shaking, Gideon has something that belongs to me. My granddaughter. Where is she? Gideon smiled. Safe. For now. Win the trial and I'll tell you where she is. Lose, and she stays hidden forever. You bastard, I hissed. You have until midnight to prepare, Aurelius said. The combat will take place in this chamber. Win and all charges are dropped. Lose, and you both burn. We were given a preparation chamber, a larger room this time, with weapons on the walls, swords, axes, implements designed to kill vampires. Alaric stood by the weapons, studying them. I paced. We're going to die, I said. That thing is 7 feet tall and made of armor, and Gideon will have tricks. Poison, silver weapons, everything. Yes, Alaric agreed. Probably. That's it? That's your battle plan? He turned to face me, and then he did something that stopped my heart. He knelt, right there in the preparation chamber, with stone walls echoing our voices. Lord Alaric Ravenwood, 650 years old, king of New York's vampire elite, knelt before me. Nathaniel, he said. It was the first time he'd used my first name since that first dinner. I'm sorry. I brought you into this world. I endangered you and your granddaughter, and now I'm asking you to fight for your life against a monster. He looked up at me, his gold eyes filled with something I'd never seen there before, shame. If you wish to leave, he said, I will not stop you. I will face the executioner and Gideon alone. But if you stay, if you fight beside me, I swear on my son Edmund's grave that I will protect you with everything I have left. I looked down at this creature who had become something more than an employer, something like a friend. I thought of Belle, somewhere in this maze, terrified. And then I thought of something else, a memory from the Gulf, my commanding officer, Captain Williams, telling me something as we huddled in a bunker while mortars fell. Son, he'd said, a soldier doesn't abandon his brothers, not when the world's on fire, not when the odds are impossible. You stand, you fight. And you trust the man next to you to do the same. I'd carried those words for 30 years. I extended my hand to Alaric, helped him to his feet. I'm a soldier, I said, and soldiers don't abandon their brothers. Alaric's eyes gleamed. Thank you, he whispered. Mrs. Ashford appeared in the doorway. From her bag, she pulled something wrapped in cloth. This belonged to Lord Edmund, she said. Lord Ravenwood's son. He carried it at the Somme in 1916. She unwrapped it. A knife. Military issue. British. WWW vintage. The blade was silver, the handle wrapped in leather worn smooth by a century of hands. Edmund died with this in his hand, Alaric said. His voice was thick, fighting for something he believed in. I want you to have it. He pressed the knife into my palm. It was heavier than I expected, solid, real. I can't, I started. You can, Alaric said. And you will, because that knife has tasted the blood of those who deserved killing, and tonight it will taste it again. The battle. Midnight came. We were brought back to the main chamber. The gallery was packed now. Every vampire for miles had come to watch us die. A gate at the far end opened, grinding, rusty, and through it stepped the executioner, 7 feet tall, maybe more, covered in gray skin that looked like scar tissue stretched over steel. It wore armor, black iron plates riveted to its chest and shoulders, and on its head a helmet with no face, just a smooth surface that reflected the torchlight like a dark mirror. In its hands, a warhammer. The head was the size of a watermelon, spiked, stained with old blood. Behind it, Gideon Marlowe. He'd changed into black combat gear. He carried a silver whip, the kind that would burn vampire flesh on contact. And he was smiling. "Ready to die, old friend?" he called to Alaric. Alaric didn't answer. Just unbuttoned his jacket, let it fall to the floor, rolled up his sleeves. I gripped Edmund's silver knife. My hands were shaking. A voice boomed through the chamber, Aurelius speaking from his throne. Let the trial begin. Fight to the death. No mercy, no quarter. May the righteous prevail. A bell tolled, once, twice, 3 times. The executioner charged. It moved impossibly fast for something so large, crossing the distance in seconds. The warhammer swung in a wide arc, aimed at Alaric's head. Alaric blurred to the side, barely avoiding it. The hammer hit the marble floor. The impact cracked the stone, sent shards flying like shrapnel. I dove behind one of the iron thrones. Gideon laughed. Run, little human, run. The executioner swung again. Alaric dodged, but slower this time. 5 days without feeding. The poison in his system. It was taking its toll. The hammer clipped his shoulder. I heard bone crack. Alaric went down hard, clutching his arm. The executioner raised the hammer for the killing blow. I didn't think. I ran, crossed the distance, drove Edmund's silver knife into the executioner's back. It wasn't a good strike. I didn't have the strength or the angle. The blade skittered off the iron armor, barely scratching the gray skin beneath. But it was enough to get the creature's attention. It turned, looked down at me. No face, just that smooth reflective helmet. And somehow, I knew it was smiling. It backhanded me with the hammer's handle. I flew, hit the stone wall 20 feet away. The impact drove the air from my lungs. Pain exploded through my ribs. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The executioner turned back to Alaric, raised the hammer again, and then Gideon struck. The silver whip lashed out, wrapped around Alaric's throat. He screamed as it burned his flesh. The silver searing vampire skin. Gideon pulled, dragged Alaric across the floor. "Where's Belle?" I gasped, forcing myself to my feet. "Where is she?" Gideon smiled. "You'll never find her. She's mine now. Leverage for the future." Rage. Pure, incandescent rage flooded through me. I looked at Alaric, broken, burned, dying, and I made a decision. Rule 3, if I bleed, I run. I was about to break that rule. I grabbed a shard of broken marble, sharp, jagged, and I slashed it across my wrist. Deep, blood welled up immediately. Dark, rich. The scent hit the chamber like a bomb. Every vampire in the gallery went silent. I could feel hundreds of eyes lock onto me, but I only cared about one. Alaric. I ran to him, dropped to my knees. "Drink," I said. He looked at me through pain-glazed eyes. "Nathaniel, no." "Rule 3, I said. "I'm supposed to run, but not this time. This time, you fight. Drink." For a moment he resisted. Then the hunger took over. His fangs descended, latched onto my wrist. The pain was extraordinary. White-hot fire racing up my arm, burning through every nerve. My vision tunneled. I could feel my life draining away. But I didn't pull back. Alaric drank. And something miraculous happened. His broken shoulder snapped back into place with sickening cracks. The burns on his throat from the silver whip healed in seconds. His skin began to glow. Not figuratively, literally glow. A golden luminescence spreading from his core outward. The poison burned away. The platinum in his system dissolved under the power of Vitalis blood. He was transforming. The whip around his neck crumbled to ash. The silver couldn't touch him anymore. The executioner brought the hammer down. Alaric caught it, one-handed. The shockwave from the impact blew dust from the floor, extinguished half the torches in the chamber. The executioner tried to pull the hammer free. Alaric squeezed. The iron handle crumpled like paper, shattered. He stood. Released my wrist gently, the wound already closing from his saliva. And he didn't look like a vampire anymore. He looked like a god of war. His eyes were miniature suns, blazing gold. His skin radiated light. Power cracked the floor beneath his feet. "You wanted to see me at full strength, Gideon?" Alaric said. His voice echoed with harmonics, layers upon layers of sound. "Here I am." He moved, instantaneous. One moment beside me, the next behind the executioner. He grabbed the creature by its armored neck, lifted it off the ground like it weighed nothing. and slammed it into the marble floor with enough force to crater the stone. The executioner's helmet cracked, fell away. Beneath it was nothing, no face, just darkness. It didn't move again. Alaric turned to Gideon. Gideon's confidence shattered. He backed away, his hands shaking. "Stay back," he screamed. "You'll what?" Alaric asked. His voice was calm, terrifying in its calmness. "You've lost, Gideon. Your executioner is broken. Your conspiracy is exposed, and now you're going to tell me where the child is." "Never," Gideon spat. Alaric sighed. Then he moved, faster than thought. He had Gideon by the throat, lifted off the ground. "I can make this quick," Alaric said, "or I can make it last. Your choice." Gideon's eyes went wide with terror. She's in the east chamber," he gasped. "Sub-level 3, guarded by 2 of my men." Alaric looked at Mrs. Ashford. "Go." She ran. "And now," Alaric said, turning back to Gideon, "justice." He reached into Gideon's jacket, pulled out a vial, the synthetic blood, the poisoned batch. "You wanted me to drink this for 4 years?" Alaric asked. "Then drink it yourself." He forced Gideon's mouth open, poured the entire vial down his throat. Gideon convulsed. The platinum oxide, concentrated, meant for slow poisoning over years, now delivered all at once. His skin turned gray, then black. Cracks appeared, spreading like a shattered mirror. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Within seconds, he crumbled to dust, killed by his own poison. Poetic justice. The chamber was silent. Aurelius stood from his throne. "The trial is concluded," he said. "Lord Ravenwood and Dr. Ashworth are victorious. All charges are dropped." He descended the steps, approached us, but before he could speak, a commotion at the side entrance. Mrs. Ashford appeared, carrying Belle in her arms. "Grandpa!" Belle cried. I ran to her, took her from Mrs. Ashford, held her tight. She was shaking, terrified, but alive. "I've got you," I whispered. "I've got you." Aurelius watched this reunion. Then he spoke. "Dr. Nathaniel Ashworth, you have proven yourself. You are granted immunity from masquerade law. Isabel Ashworth, as a Vitalis bloodline descendant, is placed under the protection of the Ravenwood name. No vampire may harm either of you." He looked at me with those ancient eyes. "You fought well, Doctor, for a human." "I'm a soldier," I replied. "We fight when we have to." He nodded. Respect in those ancient eyes. "But there is one more matter," Aurelius said. He looked past me to where Konstantin Volkov stood, trying to blend into the gallery. "Konstantin Volkov," Aurelius called. His voice echoed. Konstantin stepped forward, his red eyes wary. "You attacked Ravenwood Manor without council sanction," Aurelius said. "You attempted to claim a Vitalis by force. What say you?" Konstantin knelt. "I was misinformed, my lord, told that Ravenwood had fallen, that his territory was open." "By whom?" Aurelius demanded. Konstantin's eyes flicked to the pile of dust that had been Gideon. "By him. Marlowe approached me 3 months ago, offered me 50% of Ravenwood's holdings if I eliminated the vampire and secured the human. So that was it. Gideon had tried multiple angles, poison, hired muscle, and when both failed, he'd gone to the council." "You were a pawn," Aurelius said. "But ignorance is not innocence. You are banished from the East Coast territories for 50 years. If you return before that time, you burn." Konstantin bowed. "As you command, my lord." He fled. This time, permanently. Aurelius turned back to me. "You are free to go," he said. I looked at Alaric. The golden glow was already fading, his skin returning to its normal pale hue, but his eyes were brighter than I'd ever seen them. "Thank you," I said to Aurelius. He nodded, and we left the Undercroft, together, Belle, Mrs. Ashford, Alaric, and me, a family forged in blood and battle. Ravenwood Manor, July 15th, 2025. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the manor's medical wing. I stood in my office reviewing patient files, real patients now. Vampires from across the region who came seeking treatment for conditions that conventional medicine couldn't address. I'd become their physician, their surgeon, their bridge between the old world and the new. The debt was long gone. Belle attended the Perkins School for the Blind, though she didn't strictly need it. Her hearing was so acute she could navigate better than most sighted people. But she went anyway. To learn, to grow, to be with other children. To be. She'd learned to control her abilities, the super hearing that came from dormant vitalis blood. She could hear a heartbeat from across a room, detect lies from the rhythm of breathing. It was a gift, not a disability. And once a month, I gave blood, not much, just enough to keep Alaric strong, enough to let him walk in daylight. Our partnership had become something neither of us had expected, a friendship, a family. In the study, on the wall above the fireplace, hung a painting, 3 portraits side by side. Edmund Ravenwood, in his British uniform, painted in 1915 before he left for the Somme, Margaret Ashworth from our wedding day, smiling in her white dress, and Belle, captured in oils just last month, her unseeing eyes somehow looking directly at the viewer with uncanny accuracy. A legacy, not of blood, but of the people we'd fought for, the people we'd loved, the people we'd lost, and the people we'd saved. Alaric entered the study. He wore casual clothes now, jeans and a shirt. His face turned toward the sunlight streaming through the window. "Still strange," he said. "Feeling the sun without burning." "You'll get used to it," I said. "Will I?" He smiled. "I've been a creature of night for 650 years, Nathaniel. The day still feels foreign." He walked to the painting, studied his son's face. "Edmund would have liked you," he said softly. "He always believed in honor, in standing for what's right, even when the cost is high." I stood beside him. "I made a promise to my wife," I said, "that I'd take care of Belle, that I'd protect her. And you did." "We did," I corrected. "I couldn't have done it alone." Alaric was quiet for a moment. Then he walked to his desk, opened a drawer, pulled out Edmund's silver knife. It had been cleaned, polished, placed in a glass case. He set it on the mantel beside the paintings. "This knife saved lives," he said. "In 1916 at the Somme, in 2024 at the Undercroft, but its killing days are over. Now it's a reminder." "Of what?" I asked. "That honor," he said, "isn't about never falling. It's about standing back up for the people who need you." I thought about that, about the journey from Queens to Ravenwood Manor, about the debt and the desperation and the choice to enter a black car at 6 a.m. on a cold November morning, about Belle, safe and thriving, about Alaric, walking in daylight, about the vampires who now had a physician who understood their needs. "And legacy," I said, "isn't about what you leave behind. It's about who you lift up." Alaric turned to me, extended his hand. I shook it. Not cold anymore, warm. Human temperature, maintained by the vitalis blood that flowed between us once a month. "Because sometimes I continued, the people the world calls past their prime are the only ones wise enough to heal what time has broken." We stood there in the sunlight, 2 men separated by 6 centuries and united by a choice to fight for something bigger than themselves. Outside, Belle's laughter echoed from the garden. She was teaching the neighborhood children a game she'd invented, one that relied on sound rather than sight. The children from the nearby estates didn't care that she was blind. They only cared that she could hear them coming before they could sneak up on her, and they loved the challenge. The sound of the future, the sound of hope, the sound of a promise kept. Moral lesson. The knife rests on the mantel now, silent, still, no longer a weapon, just a reminder. Dr. Nathaniel Ashworth learned that honor is not about never falling. It's about standing back up for the people who need you. When the world told him he was past his prime, when debt crushed him and age slowed him, he discovered that wisdom doesn't come from youth. It comes from scars, from mistakes, from watching people you love slip away and learning that the only thing you can do is honor their memory by protecting the people they left behind. And Lord Alaric Ravenwood learned that after 650 years of loneliness, legacy is not about what you accumulate or how long you live. It's about who you lift up. Power and wealth meant nothing, but a physician who stood beside him in the darkness, who fed him blood when he was broken, who fought impossible odds for a child, that was legacy. Because sometimes the people society calls finished or obsolete are the only ones with the hard-won wisdom to fix what time and cruelty have shattered. The 52-year-old surgeon with trembling hands still had the steadiest nerves when lives hung in the balance. The 600-year-old vampire drowning in grief still had the strength to protect an innocent child. Age is not weakness. It is the accumulation of battles fought and won, of promises kept when breaking them would have been easier, of standing when falling would have brought relief. So I ask you, if you were in Dr. Ashworth's position that November morning, would you have gotten in the car? Would you have signed the contract? Would you have cut your own wrist to save a creature who'd lived 6 centuries? Would you have fought beside a vampire in an underground chamber to save your granddaughter? These are not easy questions. They're the questions that define us, because honor and duty aren't about the easy choices. They're about the impossible ones. The choices where every option looks like failure, except one. The option where you stand, where you fight, where you trust the person next to you even when the world says you shouldn't. Leave me a comment below. Tell me, what promise are you keeping even when it's hard? What would you sacrifice to protect someone you love? And if this story reminded you that being past your prime just means you've earned the wisdom to know what really matters, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about honor, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds between those who fight side by side. Until next time, remember, the greatest battles aren't won by the strongest. They're won by the ones who refuse to give up. And sometimes that's enough.